Hello, and welcome to another episode of Italian Property Lawyers Podcast. In today's episode, I decided to talk about a really important subject, such as the 5 costly mistakes expats make when buying property in Italy. So this is a really important aspect, and I came up with this idea because many foreigners just asked me this kind of questions, and I decided to make a video about that. So let's start from the first one. The first mistake is not understanding the buying process. Let's start saying that the Italian property purchase process can be very difficult and also different from what you're used to in your home country. For example, a very important step, and it's usually the first step, is the so-called proposta di acquisto, the purchase proposal. This is a very important paper, that should be drafted by a legal professional, where it's outlined all the necessary terms of the sale, including the price, the payment schedule, and any conditions. And also contingencies. This is another important aspect. You must be totally protected in this document because it's binding, okay? So once you sign it, you take the responsibility. And if you want to withdraw from the deal without any legal justification, you risk to lose the deposit you'll have to pay after the acceptance of the proposta di acquisto. Of course, this is the first step. Another step could be il compromesso, the preliminary contract. And then the final step is the closing, the final deed before the notary. For example, if you're able to speak well Italian, you can sign in your own. Otherwise, you have 2 options. Number 1 is to hire a professional translator, and the final deed will be both in English and in Italian. Otherwise, you can just give someone the power of attorney so that they can just sign on behalf of you. The second common mistake is skipping due diligence. Like in every other country, due diligence is a really important aspect of the process. I'd say it's one of the most critical steps and often the most overlooked. Due diligence involves the assessment of the property title, the title search, and for example, you could ask yourself if the seller is the real owner of the house, maybe outstanding mortgages, liens, or other encumbrances on the property. So we must be sure that the property is clean, because if you skip this phase, you take a big risk, because once you sign, you take the responsibility, as I said before. So another issue is the shared ownership, which is quite common in Italy. Sometimes properties have multiple owners, and all of them must agree to the sale. If even one co-owner disputes the sale, or maybe they don't want to be present on the deed because they are not interested in selling the property, this could be a very big problem for you. Also, due diligence includes reviewing zoning laws. I mean, in Italy, we have 8,000 municipality, and every municipality have their own regulation in terms of legal zoning compliance and all this kind of stuff. So it's really important making a preliminary assessment that the house is perfectly compliant with the local zoning regulation. Otherwise, again, you take a big risk and a big responsibility. And what could happen if something goes wrong? So let's say you can be fined or you have to pay to fix the problem. So this is another really important aspect of the due diligence. For instance, you could assess also if the house is in a agricultural zone. In this case, there may be restrictions on how you can use the house or renovate it. Also, it might happen, and often it happens to me many times, to be honest, that the house is considered cultural heritage. So it's a very different and longer process, let's say, and also a bit more expensive. But you'd better know in advance of time about all these kind of matters, let's say, so that you can just assess properly if you want to buy the house or not. Mistake number 3, ignoring renovation or maintenance costs. This is another common mistake, Italy's historical properties are charming, but there are some hidden costs, sometimes, not always. For example, it would be better if you could make a surveyor to inspect the house, that he can just understand what kind of renovations are needed. Otherwise, if the renovations you want to do are not possible under the municipality regulations. So this is another really important aspect. For example, it happened to me sometimes that the client wanted to buy a house and had a very clear idea about what kind of renovation they want to make in the house, but we found out that those kind of renovations weren't possible because the municipality won't allow that kind of work, so no way. And of course, you need to know this kind of stuff in advance of time. So if you want to avoid to find some nasty surprises later, it would be better to hire a surveyor to make all this kind of assessment, beforehand. In this case, the lawyer and the surveyor must act like a team in order to evaluate the whole situation. Okay. Mistake number 4. Overlooking tax and legal implication. Taxes in Italy can be surprisingly complex for foreign buyers, but also for Italians. For instance, if you're not a resident of Italy, you may pay higher taxes when purchasing a second home. The main taxes to be aware of are the imposta di registro, such as the registration tax, imposta catastale, cadastral tax, and VAT when needed, so IVA. Of course, depending on the property type and whether you're buying from a private or a developer. Additionally, Italy's inheritance laws are different from those you're used to. For example, forced heirship rules mean that your property may automatically pass to certain family members regardless on your will, or maybe you should consider something if you're planning to leave the property to your children or relatives. And also, finally, if you want to rent your property out to tourists, maybe when you're back to the US or the UK, you need, for example, you may need specific permits and will be subject to income tax on rental earnings. So also consulting with both a tax advisor and a legal expert who specializes in Italian real estate can save you from, let's say, costly surprises. The 5th common mistakes is, I think, the most dangerous, okay? Taking advice from unqualified sources, especially online. Let's say in my experience, I got in touch with hundreds of people, let's say, wanted to buy properties in Italy. And what I noticed is just a lot of misinformation. I think one of the most dangerous mistakes you can make when buying property in Italy is listening to advice from unqualified sources, particularly on the internet. Let me be very clear. The majority of advice you'll find in expats forums, social media groups, blogs, is not only unhelpful, but it can be downright harmful. So these spaces are often filled with people who write whatever comes to their mind without having the slightest understanding of how Italian property law actually works. Many people, just because they bought a property in Italy doesn't mean they understand the legal system, the complexity of the real estate law. I can assure you, I work in real estate law for, I think, 9 years, and it's really difficult, even for a lawyer, if you want to make sure 100% that you can buy safely a house. Let's imagine a person who don't know anything about Italy, language, laws, and all this kind of stuff. So I think following this kind of advice can cause significant financial losses or mostly legal issues. Okay, so this is not a field where you can joke or you can take risks. we're talking about a lot of money, and we're talking about that unfortunately many people try to take advantage of foreigners. So it will be better to be protected. So better safe than sorry, like it's said in English. Then, moreover, Italian real estate law is not intuitive, so it's complicated, it's technical, and varies based on the type of property and the specific circumstances on the sale. So I think, and it's just my personal opinion, that ignoring professional guidance in favor of advice from random strangers online can lead to serious issues. Fine, disputes, or even the invalidation of your purchase. I'd say some of the most common issues I've seen come from people who trusted bad advice about due diligence, renovations, permits, or tax obligations, only to discover later, unfortunately, that they'd made a costly mistake. So, well, if you're serious about buying property in Italy without risking anything, zero, you need to get your information from professional lawyers, tax advisors, and so on, who have the credential and expertise to guide you. The internet can be a great resource for learning general information, but it's not a substitute for proper legal advice. Trusting unqualified opinions could turn your dream home nightmare. Okay? So, I hope these 5 tips, let's say, but also common mistakes, can be useful for in order to make your decision to buy a property in Italy. The common advice is always the same, so be protected. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to find out more about the purchase process of properties in Italy, you can take a look at our website, italianpropertylawyers.com, where you'll find a lot of useful resources and information for free about everything related to purchasing a house in Italy. So thank you so much and stay tuned. Ciao.